June 9, 2025, 2 a.m. Savasleyka Military Air Base, Nizhny Novgorod region, Russia. 700 kilometers from a Ukrainian border deep inside Russian territory. The night was about to change everything. Hidden beneath fortified shelters, MiG-31K fighter jets sat armed and ready. Each one carried a single weapon beneath its belly, the Kinzhal hypersonic missile. These weren't ordinary jets on an ordinary night. This was the base Russia used to launch its most feared weapon against Ukrainian cities. And Ukraine knew exactly where they were. The question wasn't if Ukraine would strike. The question was, how do you destroy targets this far behind enemy lines? For months, Russia had used the Kinzhal missile to terrorize Ukraine. The name means dagger in Russian, and it cut deep. Each missile cost $10 million. Each one could travel at Mach 10 times the speed of sound. Each one carried a 1,000-pound warhead across hundreds of miles. Russian President Vladimir Putin unveiled this weapon in 2018, calling it unstoppable. He said it could penetrate any defense system in the world. And for the first year of the war, he seemed right. Ukrainian cities trembled when sirens warned of incoming Kinzhals. Kiev, Odessa, Kharkiv. The missile struck power plants, destroying electricity for millions. It hit residential buildings, killing families in their sleep. It targeted military bases, leaving craters where hangars once stood. Ukraine's air defense systems could stop cruise missiles and ballistic rockets. But the Kinzhal? Different story. Its speed alone made interception nearly impossible. The missile didn't just fly in a straight line, it maneuvered during descent, releasing 6 decoys that mimicked its radar signature. Even if you fired interceptors, you might hit fake targets while the real warhead slipped through. Then everything changed in May 2023. Ukraine received Patriot missile defense systems from the United States and Germany. On May 4th, Ukrainian operators achieved what Putin said was impossible. They shot down a Kinzhal over Kiev. Russia's state news agency called it fake. 12 days later, Ukraine shot down 6 more in a single night. The myth of the unstoppable weapon died. But shooting down missiles wasn't enough. Each Kinzhal that launched still threatened Ukrainian lives. Each attack still destroyed infrastructure. Ukraine needed to stop the threat at its source. They needed to destroy the planes that carried these weapons. And those planes lived at Savasleyka. Savasleyka Air Base sat in Russia's heartland, 400 kilometers east of Moscow, more than 800 kilometers from Ukraine. It wasn't near the front lines. It wasn't in contested territory. This was deep Russia, supposedly safe from Ukrainian strikes. But that distance gave Russia confidence. MiG-31K interceptors operated from this base regularly. Satellite images showed between 6 and 11 of these modified jets stationed there at various times. Each MiG-31 could carry 1 Kinzhal missile. Together, they formed Russia's primary strike capability for hypersonic attacks. The base had everything: fortified hangars to protect the aircraft, maintenance facilities to service the complex weapon systems, fuel storage for the jet's massive range. Most importantly, it had geographical security, or so Russia thought. Ukrainian military intelligence had been watching Savasleyka for months. They tracked every takeoff. They noted every pattern. They saw when MiG-31Ks left for combat missions. They watched them return. They counted the aircraft. They mapped the base layout. They identified the hangars. They studied the defenses. But knowing where the enemy is and reaching them are two different things. 800 kilometers is an enormous distance. Ukrainian fighter jets couldn't fly that far into Russian airspace without being shot down. Missiles could theoretically reach, but Russia's air defense network would detect and destroy them long before impact. Traditional military options wouldn't work. Ukraine needed something different, something unexpected, something Russia wouldn't see coming: commercial drones. Not military-grade cruise missiles or fighter jets. Simple, relatively cheap drones, modified for long-range flight, armed with explosives, controlled by operators hundreds of miles away. These weren't the small quadcopter drones you could buy in stores. Ukrainian engineers had modified them extensively. Extended fuel tanks for longer range, hardened electronics to resist jamming, first-person view cameras for precision targeting. And most cleverly, they were small enough that Russian radar struggled to detect them consistently. But even drones couldn't fly 800 kilometers from Ukraine. The distance remained too great. So Ukraine did something remarkable. They didn't launch from Ukraine. They smuggled drones into Russia weeks earlier, hidden in trucks, transported along civilian routes, assembled in safe houses far from the border. Then, when the moment came, they drove these trucks to positions near the target and launched from inside Russia itself. This was the strategy Ukraine had tested 1 week earlier. On June 1, 2025, they launched Operation Spiderweb. That night, Ukrainian security services executed the most ambitious drone strike of the war. 117 drones attacked 5 Russian air bases simultaneously: Belia, Dyagilevo, Ivanovo-Seveny, Olynya, Ukrainka. These bases stretched across 5 time zones. Some were over 4,000 kilometers from Ukraine. One was in Siberia, the first Ukrainian strike that deep into Russian territory. The targets weren't random. Each base housed strategic bombers, Tu-95s and Tu-22M3s that carried cruise missiles. These aircraft had been bombing Ukrainian cities for months. Now Ukraine brought the war to them. The drone pilots sat in Ukraine, controlling their weapons through encrypted connections. Each pilot targeted specific points on each aircraft: fuel tanks in the wings, cockpits, engine intakes. The drones weren't large enough to completely destroy these massive bombers, but they didn't need to. A well-placed explosive in a fuel tank would do the job. Video footage showed drones landing directly on Tu-95 wings near full fuel tanks. Massive fireballs erupted across multiple bases. According to Ukrainian claims, they destroyed or damaged 41 Russian military aircraft. American officials confirmed 20 aircraft were hit, 10 destroyed completely. Financial Times reported the losses represented 20% of Russia's operational long-range bomber fleet. The damage exceeded $7 billion. More importantly, these Soviet-era bombers couldn't be replaced. Russia hasn't manufactured Tu-95s or Tu-22M3s since 1991. Each destroyed aircraft was irreplaceable. Russia immediately declared states of emergency at several bases and began dispersing their remaining bombers across the country. Operation Spiderweb proved the concept worked, but it also sent a message to Russia. No air base was safe. No distance was too far. And Ukraine had the capability to strike deep inside Russian territory. 8 days later, on June 9th, Ukraine turned its attention to Savasleyka. This time, the target wasn't strategic bombers. It was the jets that launched Kinzhals. The attack began at 2 a.m. Russian monitoring sources detected drone threats between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m. Witnesses reported multiple explosions across the base. Some described seeing rocket-powered UAVs, drones with additional propulsion for faster approach speeds. The Ukrainian operation targeted the fortified shelters where MiG-31Ks were stationed. These weren't easy targets. The shelters were built to withstand significant explosions. But Ukrainian intelligence knew exactly which shelters housed the Kinzhal carriers. The drones struck with precision. First explosion, then secondary explosions, then prolonged burning. The secondary explosions suggested fuel or ordnance caught fire. When fully loaded, a MiG-31K carries not just the Kinzhal missile, but thousands of pounds of jet fuel. That combination creates devastating fireballs. Ukraine's general staff issued a statement the following morning. They confirmed Special Operations Forces had struck Savasleyka in coordination with other defense units. Preliminary reports indicated 2 Russian aircraft were destroyed, most likely a MiG-31 and either a Su-30 or Su-34. Battle damage assessment was ongoing. The full extent of damage would take time to confirm, but the strike sent an unmistakable message. Russia responded as expected. Their defense ministry claimed minimal damage and operational continuity. Russian telegram channels posted footage attempting to show limited impact. But the explosions had been too large. The fires had burned too long. And satellite imagery analysts began their work. The significance of this strike went beyond two destroyed aircraft. Savasleyka was Russia's primary base for Kinzhal operations. Every time a MiG-31K loaded with a Kinzhal took off to attack Ukraine, it came from here. Now that base had been penetrated. The supposedly safe rear area had been breached. Russian commanders faced new reality. If Savasleyka wasn't safe, no air base was safe. They would need to disperse aircraft even further, spread them across more bases. That would reduce operational efficiency, increase logistics costs, complicate maintenance, slow response times. Exactly what Ukraine wanted. But the strike also revealed something about Ukraine's intelligence capabilities. They knew which shelters housed which aircraft. They knew when aircraft would be present. They knew the base layout in detail. This suggested either excellent satellite intelligence from Western partners or human intelligence sources on the ground. Possibly both. Either way, it meant Ukraine could target specific locations deep inside Russia with confidence. The timing mattered too. This strike came just one day after another Ukrainian success. On June 7th, a Ukrainian F-16 fighter jet shot down a Russian Su-35 over Kursk region using an American-made air-to-air missile. Video footage confirmed the kill. These back-to-back victories, shooting down Russian fighters and striking Russian air bases, demonstrated Ukraine's growing offensive capability. They were no longer just defending. They were taking the fight to Russia. The Kinzhal had been Russia's answer to Ukraine's resilience. When conventional missiles failed to break Ukrainian will, Russia deployed hypersonics. When Ukrainian air defense improved, Russia fired more Kinzhals. The weapon was supposed to be unstoppable. It was supposed to overwhelm Ukrainian defenses. Instead, Ukraine learned to shoot them down. Then Ukraine learned to destroy the planes that carried them. The hunter became the hunted. Consider the economics. Each Kinzhal missile costs $10 million. Each MiG-31K aircraft costs even more. Training pilots for these specialized missions takes years. Now Russia had to worry about losing these expensive assets before they even launched. The drones Ukraine used cost a fraction of that amount. Even modified for long range, each drone probably cost tens of thousands of dollars at most. The return on investment was extraordinary. But beyond economics, there was psychology. Russian pilots knew their bases could be hit. They knew Ukrainian drones had struck deep into Russia multiple times. They knew colleagues at other bases had watched their aircraft burn. That knowledge affects decision-making. It creates hesitation. It makes every mission feel more dangerous, not just when you're over Ukraine, but even when you're on the ground in Russia. The strike on Savasleyka wasn't the last. Ukraine continued targeting Russian military infrastructure throughout summer 2025. More air bases, more aircraft, more deep strikes. Each one reinforced the same lesson. Distance doesn't equal safety. Technology doesn't guarantee superiority. And Ukraine wouldn't stop fighting until the threat ended. Russian officials had promised the Kinzhal would change the war. In a way, they were right. The Kinzhal forced Ukraine to develop better air defenses. It pushed Ukraine to find creative solutions. It motivated Ukraine to strike back harder, but not in the way Russia intended. The Kinzhal was supposed to break Ukraine's will. Instead, it sharpened Ukraine's resolve. After the Savasleyka strike, Russia continued launching Kinzhals at Ukrainian cities. But now each launch carried new risk. Ukrainian patriots stood ready to intercept. Ukrainian intelligence tracked the aircraft. Ukrainian drones waited to strike back. The balance had shifted. The weapon Putin called unstoppable had been stopped. The bases he thought were safe had been hit. The war he expected to win quickly had stretched into its third year. And Ukraine kept fighting. Military analysts studying this conflict will point to June 2025 as a turning point. Operation Spiderweb and the Savasleyka strike demonstrated that modern warfare had changed. Small drones could threaten massive air bases. Intelligence and precision mattered more than raw firepower. And defenders with creativity and determination could strike back against attackers with superior resources. Russia had the bigger military, more missiles, more aircraft, more money. But Ukraine had something else: necessity, innovation, and the will to use both. The burned shelters at Savasleyka told the story. Russia deployed its most advanced weapon to terrorize Ukrainian cities. Ukraine responded by bringing the fight to Russian soil. They waited. They planned. They watched as Russia grew confident in its hypersonic advantage. Then they struck, not at the missiles in flight, at the source, at the bases, at the aircraft. They obliterated the entire site. Because sometimes the best defense is a very precise offense. And sometimes patience is more powerful than panic. Ukraine had both. What would you have done differently? If you commanded Ukrainian forces, knowing you faced hypersonic missiles but couldn't afford to just defend, what strategy would you choose? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more stories about military strategy, technological innovation, and conflicts that changed modern warfare, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because war isn't just about who has the biggest weapons. It's about who uses them better. And on June 9, 2025, Ukraine proved they had learned that lesson well.